Welcome to the Red, White, and You Show with Dean McMurray, the military.
Hey, everybody, welcome back to another awesome episode of the Red, White, and You Show with the military medium. Today, folks, I have a real treat for you. My next guest is known as the Barefoot Sensei, the Barefoot Nomad, or the Walking Mountain. You might have seen him in Nat Geo's episode or mini-series of the Legend of Mick Dodge. That's right. We got Mick Dodge on the line. Mick, how we doing?
Yoish. Good. How you doing, bro?
Good. A lot of people don't know this about you, Mick. And I know, you talked about, you shy away from the thought about being a celebrity or somebody that's very well known, because just like you always like to say, like your last name, you love to dodge things.
That's me, man. I was born Dodge. Dodge.
But you grew up in a military family and you served for a time in the Marine Corps. Is that correct?
Yeah, my dad and his brothers and my mother's uncles were all lifers, Mustangers, career Marines. And then when I hit that age during Vietnam, I, served with them. So I have a unique relationship with my dad and my uncles in the fact that, I grew up on Marine bases, graduated high school over in Okinawa. They were all training martial artists. I mean, in my life, 500 hours. The first thing you heard was "get out of the rocks," and we went running 3 miles. And you think on Friday evening when happy hour came around, Saturday I'd be off. I've seen them guys. They'd wake me up Saturday, Sunday morning. We'd go jogging. They'd be barfing alongside the road from happy hour, and so I had a pretty unique relationship with them. And then they'd fly me back home to the Olympics to be with my granddaddies and grandmamas almost every summer. I graduated over at Kubasaki High School. And then I did a lot of martial arts kind of training stuff over there. And I served with them, and great men, just wonderful mentors, and had a good time with them.
Well, it's interesting. You talk about kind of growing up, and that's where you live in that Olympic peninsula region of Washington State, which is just that was one of my first duty stations at Fort Lewis back in the day, and just the beautiful flora and fauna that is out there, and it's almost like a prehistoric land. One of the things I remember our conversation prior, you talked about connection to the land. And I think you said it, I think it was your grandfather. And you said, anytime you come back from being in the city, talking about, take a few days going in the mountains, get the city smell off you, I believe it was.
Yeah. He had this, he'd often pick me up at the airport, and we'd spend a couple of days getting over to the west side of the Olympics. And he'd make you get in the glacial rivers, which are, they'll shrink your testicles up to little marbles, It was cold. But he'd make you get in there to set your body temperature to the mountains and immerse in it. And so he pretty much, that routine, that pattern taught me, how to step out of the modern world and just immerse yourself in the old growth forest and, just all the things that are growing and stuff. And that cold training, I still do it to this day. I got a indoor pool I've set up here. And so each morning I plunge in there to, the wash and move my whatever I've been thinking or feeling or having in me. I use that to push that through me and, move it on.
Well, that has a lot to do with the endocrine system and everything else doing some of the really what is just old practices of taking care of your health, right?
Yeah. I've always, growing up as a kid with my dad, my uncles, and other mentors and granddaddies and grandmamas, I always had this desire to grow up. You know, as a little kid, I couldn't wait to grow up and get older. And as I got older, finally, and got up to about 5'9", I started growing out because they were, you know, one uncle was turning me on to barbells and training and lifting like that. And all the research that a lot of the old time athletes were doing, Sandow, Bill Pearl, who was a bodybuilder, had a great influence. And we'd get the magazines and stuff. My uncle would, you know, kind of guide me through lifting and training. And so I picked up a lot of those disciplines, and plus backing it up with, I was in a lot of dojos. And about the time I would get good in a dojo as a kid, my dad would move me to something else. So I went through karate and judo and aikido, and I just was just constantly getting a lot of movement disciplines into my life. And now I'm pretty much sure I'm the highest ranked in the world at a discipline I call Hayako Ikimas, which means run like a son of a bitch, because I wasn't any good at any of them, you know. So my uncle said, "You better learn how to run, boy." So I do a lot of footwork, a lot of running, a lot of barefooting.
Right. Well, let's talk about that a little bit before we do. You know, talking about a lot of people, including myself, remember the series that featured you, The Legend of Mick Dodge with Nat Geo. You know, and the seasons that I had. Now, I want to share is that was back a number of years ago. God, was that back in the early 90s?
The show?
The show.
No, that was got a 2015 or 16 or sometime in there.
Okay.
So
I was trying to place, I guess, the piece of where the show was, but yeah, it was the original air date. Sorry, I just clicked on this, was January 7th of 2017. So, yep. So, and then I believe your last one, while it kind of encompassed that year, I believe. But yeah, so very interesting. But the thing that I want to share is you talked about, or a lot of things that are in the show, these were part of your everyday life. And what a lot of people don't realize is that the way that you were living at the time, that was a real thing. Can you take us through that a little bit?
yeah, I was so fascinated with movement and training that I went out and I was stashing kettlebells and weights and stuff in caves, and, you know, using the rivers at treadmills. I was watch river otters swim, and I would train with those. And I was just immersing everything I had learned about through what I call the domestic trainings and the military trainings, the Marine Corps, martial arts, weightlifting. And I just went out and immersed it into the wild. I actually got started by doing that by stepping out of shoes. My feet had hurt real bad from wearing shoes and boots and that kind of thing. And I stepped out, and everything I knew about training, I started putting into my feet to grow them back. And so I call follow your feet, and the earth will teach. And what it'll teach you, I don't know, but I know what it'll teach me and what it taught me. And so as I developed practice and training in that, Nat Geo came along, and I was kind of known for, you know, running around with a cart and pulling barbells around and stuff like that, and running barefoot and stuff. And they came out to do the show, and I turned down a couple of networks for Nat Geo, and because people are looking for a survivalist, and I'm not a survivalist, I'm a thrivalist. I have a great time. When I go in the city, that's where you have surviving. You know, to me, it was just an exploration and a wonderful journey. And so Nat Geo were basing episodes on my life, but it was called reality TV. And when I so went with him. I thought reality TV meant more real National Geographic, because all I knew about Nat Geo was a magazine. And so as they got, doing I'm kind of hard on them sometimes, but when they got to doing their episodes and stuff, it was like, it's a comedy show to me. I was very interested in showing off the Olympic mountains. That was my teacher, and how I trained and went in it. But I remember the guy, director, he said, nah, he said, physical training like that bores people, So I watched them take episodes in my life and create. We try to create these episodes, get them down into, 30 minutes, 20 minutes of shooting. We shot like, I think 36 of them. I've only seen one of them.
Really?
Yeah, I've only seen one. I watched it. I had to get stoned to watch that. And man, I just said, shit, this is boring. I don't want anything to do with this, and especially watching myself. But I did love the scenery. The camera guys, man, they were capturing the mountains. So I was very satisfied with that part. But I don't know. The other stuff was, it's the medium I didn't understand. And now I got a little bit better kind of understanding of it. And it was fun. It was interesting. And then after the show became really the interesting part to me, because it triggered me to step out of my lifestyle, because I was pretty much, I'd disappear in the mountains for, days and months at a time. And I would train, and I'd get down to you talk about paleo training. I was paleo, but I'd get down to 155 pounds, losing weight and doing all that stuff. And, I'm 70 now. So I came on out of that with all I'd learned in the practice and practices I developed and stuff. And so I'd come out and take a look at the rest of the world, and made my way down here to Shasta Valley and set up my strength farm gym down here. So.
One of the things that always, I think, intrigued not only me, but everybody else was the thing that, you were everywhere you were going there barefoot. In our last conversation, you were talking about the connection to the earth, but what was really also intriguing, how that all started. You talked about back when I think you were working construction or something, and you have boots on. Can you start take everybody back to the beginning and the journey of becoming barefoot for Mick, and then kind of how, the philosophy behind that?
Yeah. I'd always learned physical fitness training, how to process the sad and the mad and the angst that comes in your life. I mean, I trained, and so it was during my training, and it was actually at Fort Lewis. You say Fort Lewis, I was working there as a mechanic, and my feet just began to hurt. I had plantar fasciitis, hammer toes, shortened Achilles tendon. I had turned my feet over to shoes and boots, and I could just barely walk. And I went into the hospital, the doctor, and he says, he said, we're going to cast your feet. We're going to leave them cast for about 6 weeks, 3 to 4, 6 weeks. And then after that, we're going to cut them off and put you through, cut the cast off and put you through rehabilitation. And so I went out to my cabin on the hoe, and I had my feet cast, had a fire going, and had an old magazine, National Geographic magazine. And I picked that thing up, and I opened it right to a page about Chinese women foot binding. And when I saw that about foot binding, I realized that's what I had done to my feet. And so I sat there all night. I was opening up the magazine, looking at that, looking at my feet. They're cast. I had all my shoes lined up under the cabin window there. And by morning, I take my hunting knife and cut off those casts. And here, you know, I really took a good look at my feet. And I was a 225-pound bodybuilder, you know, a lot of mass. And I looked at my feet, and there were these white, pathetic looking, gnarly, you know, dripped up things. Cut those casts off, and I just started barefooting. I just said, shit, I'm going to stay out here until my feet come back to normal, and see if I can get everything I know about training to put them, you know, back into my feet. Started moving, you know, and the weeks go by. I got to go back to work. Eventually, there, you know, as a mechanic. So what I did, and I made this vow. I said, I'll never wear boots again. I'll never wear shoes again. You know, I was just arrogant dude going, I'll just go everywhere barefoot. And I go back to work, and I cut the soles off the bottom of my boots, kept the steel toe top part, went to work. And of course, they think I'm a freaked out vet, you know, I'm just freaking out. And I actually was, because I was stepping out of the insulation of shoes, the insulation of walls, the insulation of these habits we get in that confine us. And I just started following my feet, and I was running further. I was getting, my body movements were better. At the same time, I was training a lot of young guys, and I was talking barefoot all the time, and they were barefooting. And my theory of growing my feet back was I had all the weightlifting, weight gain powders, you know, all the mixes. The magazine said, oh, you gotta eat this. I ate it. You know, I had all that stuff. And here I was training more, going further, running further, getting stronger, losing weight. And I couldn't eat that stuff. I just I would train. I thought, I got to get stuff in me. And I just couldn't get it down. And then one of the guys, the young guys, he goes, you know, it's the oddest thing. He said all the weight gain powders and stuff. And the more I barefoot, I feel like I just don't want to eat them. And then it dawned on me, wow, I'm connecting my feet back into this earth again. It's telling me I'm too heavy. And it was also telling me, you know, there's other stuff to be eating that's more natural and attuned for the body. And so that really took me off on a journey that I was just totally mesmerized by that. And then I left the work, left the job, left my houses, and just took off for the mountains and just kept following my feet. And I've never regretted it. I stepped out of just all this stuff that I thought you were supposed to have, houses, cars, and all those kind of things. Yeah. Now I'm getting them back. Now I'm pulling them back in again. I'm old, you know. So,
but you're doing it in a different way, though, Mick. Too. You're doing it from a
Absolutely.
different space, right? Because now here you are, you know, on the tail, or you know, towards what people some call their tail end. I mean, you still get many years on this earth, right? And to share that, what you've learned thus far with others. I think it's interesting because, you know, you talk about connecting again to the earth and like getting nutrients from, you know, from the earth and different things, and where the body doesn't need as much or different. It's kind of interesting because, you know, it's sad that, you know, we have forgotten, a lot of us have forgotten what the Native Americans already knew for eons, right?
Yeah.
They knew that a long time ago. They're like, yeah, that's nothing new. What's up with that?
Well, you know, the thing for me was, there's a saying, I think Paul Shepard brought it up. He said, those times are these times. And in speaking about the old ways, and I kind of push it a little further and go, those times are these times, but not the same time. And, you know, what I'm really interested, I'm one part ex-Marine, one part hippie, and I'm a Dodge. So I look for that middle path in between. And what are those old ways that fit today? And one of the things that was always, I've always wanted to open up a dojo or a gym, you know, some kind of gym, some kind of training. And when you're barefooting, one thing you really become aware of is the soil and the ground where you're putting the foot. I mean, barefooting to me is training attention. And one of the first things that happens when you step out of shoes, you start paying attention, man. You know, where are the stickers? Where's the glass? Where's the dog shit? Where are the assholes? I mean, there is just, you know, your attention is working at that time and pulling that attention in. But then comes the next stride for me is acceptance. And you have to accept, like for me, when way back, I had to accept, I did that to my feet. Nobody else put them in shoes like I did. I was kind of guided there, but I had every shoe imaginable, you know, and my feet just got weaker and weaker. I did that, and I have to accept that. The other thing I had to accept is I have a body memory in me that knows how to fit into this earth. Fitness to me is two words: fit the nest. You know, and the nest is what a bird does, builds a home so they can nurture their young to become more mature. And so following that fitness and connecting back in again was, I had to find, you begin to explore the arrogance in you and the arrogance in me. Like one example of arrogance, I made that vow, I'll never wear shoes again. I'm way up in the Olympics, barefoot, and snows come in. I go to sleep, and that morning I get up and there's snows. And I got like 20 miles. I need the pump to get out of there. Here I am with my bare feet. And I took my jacket, and you got to imagine, it took me about 2-3 days. I was running around getting firewood. I was cutting my jacket up to build a set of mocks because, you know, it dawned on me, yeah, I got bare feet, but I got front paws to weave and make things. And so I started building my mocks, but I had to keep a fire going, had to keep my feet warm. I almost lost my feet over this. And I got down out of there. And what that showed me was the arrogance in me, where I could make a statement, I'll never wear shoes again, you know. And it was finding that middle path, finding that place in the middle, and not making such stupid statements, and showing my arrogance. And arrogance to me is what I train on here and share with others. I work on like stupidity, you know, how to use weights and running and training to handle stupidity. Well, barefooting does that real good, because the pathway out of stupidity is paying attention. And then you have to develop this attention. You have to start accepting. You have to accept things you can control and things you cannot control. And then the middle path comes is how to step out of control, where you're just in the flow. You're dealing with reality and dealing with that truth. And boredom, sadness, a lot of those qualities I work on. But arrogance to me, that was in me, and I see it in a lot of other people at times. It comes and goes. Is the pathway out of arrogance is being humble, having humility. But the trouble with humility is you get to whining, man. You take it too far. And so it's like, you got honor. You know, when you've taken it too far, you bring honor in. But the trouble with honor, it turns you into an asshole. You know, there's times when you're being real honorable, but you're just being an asshole. You're not fitting that truth, that reality. And so you got humility, you got honor, and what balances that is humor to me. When you've gone too far with humility, bring in humor. Too far with honor, bring in humor. And so I went on a long quest. What is the meaning and foundation of humor? And what I found is the fact that we're all so full of shit. You know, it just like cuts right through the arrogance. You know, you think you know something. And that time in the mountains, here I was being arrogant. Oh, I'll never wear shoes again. There's a time and there's a place for it. There's, you know, I wear sandals, moccasins. There are times when I bring in that sole in the footwear, but the main reason I keep my feet on a regular practice plan of the earth, because through that attention and that acceptance, I had to accept that my feet no longer fit this earth. Mm. When I started stepping out, I realized my feet do not fit into this earth. And when I got a lot of Native American brothers and other brothers and sisters and stuff. One of the common things I see that really brings out the middle path, the grounding of their teachings and their wisdom and stuff like that is the feet are connected to the ground and keeping that connection going. And I lost that. And I think a lot of people feel a sadness in their life. And sadness is, to me, you got a lot of, I've been to college for about a few hours. I couldn't stand the sitting in their stuff, but I love all the stuff they do. I mean, I love reading their books and stuff, but sadness, they call it depression. They got all kinds of fancy names for it. But to me, it's basically you lost something. You know, a loved one dies. The forests are disappearing. There's a sadness. There's about loss. And I became, if you stay sad too long, you start getting mad. And so I was always trying to figure out the way how to use physical training, the process, the sad, and also the mad. Well, I think I found a lot of sadness in my life was just that lost connection with the earth. Mm. And I was filling it up with other things, other experience. I'd blame it on something else. But I found it really had to do with that lost connection of the earth. And so the more I pursued that, who became my teacher were plants. And the way I was doing that was, if you got a flower pot and that plant's been in that pot too long, what happens to those roots? They become root bound. And so you have to transplant. You have to train that plant and put it back out in the earth again and get it going, or get a bigger pot. And so the flower pot and the shoes to me were kind of the same. I looked at my feet and I say, wow, I've lost my sensory connection, that flow. I'm going to what that plant does and what I need to know. You just can't take any plant, stick it anywhere. You have to learn things about it. You need knowledge and skills. And so that curiosity that comes from that, it was applying it to myself in my own training. And so I do cold soaking. I actually have a practice here where I dig a hole about 6 to 8 inches deep. I plant people's feet in it, and they stand there for, I've gone from sunrise to sunrise 24 hours and make like a tree. Just plant your feet in there and get a compost bucket, because you got to take a dump sometime during the night, and get some, I have some barbells around, but to stand in one place in that dirt and just become like a tree, become like a plant, just, get to that place where I don't know shit, and I'm just going to stand here and learn stuff, And those practices led me to dirt, and we have lost over a third of the dirt in this country, and so it's time to start growing soil. And when you start growing soil, you're growing the foundation of an earth gym. I mean, an earth gym, you have your feet, but the foundation is that ground that you're on. So once you're growing good soil, microbiomes coming back, you're growing plants, you're growing trees, and you continue on. That shows you how to grow strength. And that's why I call it the strength farm. Because not only do I work on growing my own strength, and others of us train that we grow plants. I mean, in order to come here and train, you have to bring something to plant. That's the payment. You have to pay by planting trees or planting soil or doing flower, because that feeling that comes from that intensifies your feeling of reconnecting to the earth again. I've sat with a lot of people that, you know, shake rattles and we'll go into higher consciousness and they got all these practices and stuff. But my main question is, what are you doing physically? Are you cleaning up the water? Are you planting trees? Are you doing something? Because if you don't have that part going, you're still stuck back in your flower pot. You're still in your cages and going, you know, someone else is doing it. That's arrogance. If you do it for yourself, the growth that comes out of that is just amazing. At least for me, anyway.
I love that. I love that analogy as well. So one of the things, Mick, and I know we talked about this, you know, you're part of the what I would call the Vietnam generation and served during that era, and you know, and of course veterans that are just, you know, like myself, that grew up from the 70s and everywhere else, and regardless. But you know, a lot of veterans have seen a lot of different things, not just veterans, but first responders, a lot of different traumas. And I know you were talking about a lot of principles, talking about connecting the earth, but it sure sounded like, you know, regardless of what loss or what experiences somebody might have had, you know, it sure sounded like some of those principles would work well for somebody if applied in any situation. But I would ask is, you know, have you seen some of that, people dealing with some traumas after combat, and then also like how, you know, the processing of that, and then also the aspect of you know, I guess connecting with the earth, or the earth gym, you know, reconnecting to nature in order to build a healthy mind, body, and spirit.
Yeah, I mean, you know, Dad, my uncle, they were World War II, Korea, Vietnam. You know, they all went through all those things, and their process and way of handling it, they didn't say much about it. They came back and got on to the next chapter in their life. And you know, I heard somebody was talking about my family once, and they said, you guys are like a bunch of yellow labs, you know, you just can't, you know, how labs are always happy and jumping around and shit, you know, you guys are like that. Other people, there's a thing about sadness that if you don't, you need to process the loss. And I think there's some incredible techniques. This just for me, and for using song. I've seen a lot of vets use the singing, the healing, the teacher plants. There's ways that they move it through it. I use physical exercise and movement. You know, get out and run. You know, it's like outrun it. You know, move away from it. And so those processing things are valuable. I think they're very useful. But there's a danger, I feel, or not a danger, but a trap, where there's an old saying, misery loves company. And so you start singing your sad song, and sadness is about loss. You've lost your song, you've lost your harmony, you've lost your calling, the image of yourself. And so there's singing that song and finding those words and processing that on. But you got to get to the joy song. If you're always running around detaching the sad, or the anger and the mad, the angst, you got to be able to move that into the next song, the next conversations, the next way of being, and that's your joy song, and bringing the joy. And, it shows you a lot of the lessons that you learned. And one of the biggest lessons for me when, it was how stupid I was. So it was like, give me that joy song, give me that laughter so I can laugh at myself and process that. And then I think that practice of training and singing and moving that on comes into the dream song. You dream your vision now. You move. You want to move on. If you get too much joy, you're partying all the time, you ain't going to get shit done. And that's got a pitfall itself. You start drinking too much booze or smoking way too much pot or something like that. So it's a discipline in developing your song and your healing practices and stuff. But so there's a pitfall there that I see with a lot of people, and when I finally heard my dad and my uncles really talking about past life experiences and get them, they were much older. They were at a time now where they could bring that process out. They could bring those times out and hear the lessons that they had. And so moving that sad into the, you got sadness, you got madness. One of the things my grandfather taught me when I was a kid was he'd make me pick up a stone. And so I'd pick up a stone and I'd be pouting, I'd be running around pouting about something. And he'd say, pick up that stone and hold that over your head. And I'd be holding that over my head and I'd be shaking. It gets so heavy. And then he'd go, now drop it. He says, you feel that release, you feel that drop, you release that pouting to the ground. You don't know what to do with it, boy, you release it to the ground. And that was a very deep lesson for me. And my dad had been through that lesson with him, my uncles. And so training in strength is you hold your hand up. The meaning of strength is you grip and you hold and you release. So we got shit in us we need to release. And how do you release that? You get strong. The more you can grip, the more you're able to release and detach. And I took that and applied that into habits that I had in my life and still have and still work with. Stupidity, pain, old Marine Corps saying, pain is the release of weakness. And how do you release the weakness? You get strong. Fear to me is how do I change my fear into excitement? And because fear is always in the future. Right. Misery. How do I release the sadness? How do I release the madness? Get that practice down. That's what I worked on. But then it becomes a matter, how do you release gladness? How do you release the joy, the happiness, and send that out and stuff? It's about grip, hold, and detach, how to release it. Well, an example of this, what I do here is I work on the G-force, gravity. So I got one guy I'm training where, we train in the grip, the grit, and then the grin. So if you're lifting a weight and you got your grip going, a lot of people have strong grip and it's really good, strong grip, but they have little grit. And a lot of people got a lot of grit. They hang on to shit you shouldn't be hanging on to, you just keep hanging on to it. And what I do at repetitions is when you pick up a weight, you got it up here, when you release it, bring a grin in, sometimes they use two fingers and go, yeah, I'll grin this son of a bitch, The double hand is pull your whole face up, but it's releasing and detaching that grin that get that going, because there's always the grim. So I'll work on, what's the grim today? And then how do I use it in my practice, doing reps to build that intensity. And you got the grip, but during that, you're holding it. The holding power is the grip. You got to do the time. And then comes the detachment, the releasement. Well, how to get that grin where it begins in the beginning and then it goes through the grit, and you're working on your grin the whole time. So then I find it very useful when I call it the game of bowling. We're all in this game of life. I call it the game of bowling. One of the things we all think about, I don't care where you're at, it's how long you can stay in the game. You know, how long can I stay? A professional athlete, anybody is saying, well, how long can I keep doing this? You know, or how can I get out of the game? And so that playing, when I run into the asshole trying to take away my grin, you know, that's the game. And I train that going, come on, try to take it. You know, one thing from the TV show, Facebook, you get these trolls, you know, the guy goes, they go like, you're such a fake. I just love them. You know, I go like, wow, no, I'm actually a Dodge. And I am trying to fake you out, like step outside, right. You know, get back in the earth again. So I just try to take away the grin. It's mine. And I own it. I must train it and I must make it strong. But then the grin and the grim, you know, you got the grip, the grit, the grin and the grim. You're trying to get to that middle place of the grace of the moment. Right. You know, of moving with grace, of moving where I'm not even thinking about any of those. I'm just in that flow. And when I see grace, I see it in the trees, man. I see it in rivers. I see it in clouds, things growing. That's the grace that I want to infect myself on and be a part of. And I want to move that grace into the city as well, because it's incredible stuff. This technology and all these tools, you know, we're a tool using animal. How do you find the grace of that? I mean, you've heard from my perspective, you know, I'm coming back in. Like, to give you an example, you know, I bought this hacienda, this farm. I got this 15 acres here, but bought another 220 acres just forest up in the Siskiyou Mountains that is just leave it alone, let it grow wild. But as I started coming in and doing this project to open up this old strength farm, I was in this place 3 nights. The headlamp on my hat, I had one of the headlamps to look around. The battery went out and I suddenly realized I had lights. So it was like, oh, God, I turned a light switch on. I was coming back in. And then this tool, I started looking at the computers and getting that set up and all that. And it was very fascinating to me. But the conspiracy stuff I started seeing and all this conspiracy. And so what I do is, here comes somebody with a conspiracy. I went out and trained with that, and I land my feet and I walk it. And what I found is it's 3 words: conspire, conspirit. That conversation is trying to control me and con my spirit. And the last word is, do you see? Conspirit. Do you see? You see? It's trying to con your spirit because it is actually happening there in reality and stuff. Because it's trying to conjure up your fear. It's those things. So how do I dodge that? You know, so it doesn't pull me into sadness and madness and those kind of things. And that's the game to me. I mean, that's the opportunity we have at this time to use this tool. Because look at the way it can, you know, allows us to connect now and share these thoughts and ideas. I'm just like, what a useful tool. How do I use it? You know, and how do I fit it in and do not get caught in its spell? You know, where it pulls you in and now you're, people run around, oh man, did you hear what's happening over there? Yeah, but it ain't happening here. You know, I said, what's happening here is we need to grow more soil. We need to get things done. And I think that's what growing is such. You're going to grow strength. You got to grow all the life around you as well. You got to make sure it grows. My dad taught me something. You know, my family was Constitution of the United States, man. That's what you do as a Marine. That's what military vets, law enforcement is, the defense of the Constitution of the United States. And so you got freedom, pursuit of happiness. But I think there's a third one that people need to go back and start reading again. All the documents involved. It's called tranquility, domestic tranquility, because that balances out your freedom and your pursuit of happiness. Is my community tranquil? Are they in harmony? Are they peaceful? That's what we signed up to protect. At least I did in my family. And my dad always said to me, you will never be free unless you make sure those around you are also free. That's the key. That's how you get to that place. And I think it's some wise words. And I really try to live my life by that. Is you got the freedom to do what you want to do. I support it, but then if it starts, messing things up and something like, hey, you're dumping too much plastic in the ocean, but that's not a good act,
Right.
That's when we balance it out.
Mick, if they want to check out the Earth Gym, if they want to check out more about you, where can they do that?
That's a really good question. Well, I think they do it by just stepping out of your shoes. Okay. Just stepping out of your shoes and do the practice of what I call following your feet, and allow what's happening in the moment again to be teach you. I am working on. I got a website page out there. I'm working on that. There's a Facebook page, and I'm trying to pull those things together. And I'm going to be sharing my practice. But I think what's really important is for everybody to start developing their own practice. Take what you can get from somebody else, pull it to yourself, and then share that. One of the things to me is when you begin to really touch the earth, you begin to care. That caring will die unless you share. You have to share it back or it will die. Well, that's the way we are as a human animal. And how do you share it? You must be really aware. So care, share, and aware. And I'm at a place now where I'm 70, and I want to start, I feel this call to share, and I share it orally now with people and on the road and stuff like that. But I'm working on the web page, and you can go to mickdodge.com. It's got to be redone, and I'm working on that. It'll be a couple of months and stuff. But I also want to say, I'm getting ready to do a YouTube channel. Been getting ready to do that for a couple of years, and I actually have one. It's got 11 people on it. It's like, but those, I'm really slow. The first thing is I barefoot, and if you want to go fast, wear shoes, get in a car. That's speed. Barefooting is a slow, it slows you down to the natural spin of the earth, which is, pretty fast. And then the other thing is I'm old. I love getting older. I just, because when you get older, you can really, really slow down. I drive down the road now and 35, 40 miles an hour is like really quick for me. And people are back there so irritated, and they come driving all around. It's like, yeah. I give them the smile, But I love that pace that's coming, and you have to train at running really fast and to really know what an old pace is. Mm-hmm. And the other one is there's a real danger. A dangerous thing to do in barefooting. It hooks your attention, and like make sure your number one survival tool for barefooting to me is a magnifying glass or a microscope, and just let it pull you down into the earth. And then you get lost in there and shit. And you come back out, and here, I got hundreds of phone messages and stuff because I get that it pulls me off into being part of that web. And so finding the balance with this kind of communication and then getting into that communication is a real challenge, and it takes a practice. So it will shift and shape your consciousness. And I don't know if you go to higher consciousness. I think you go to lower consciousness, get down to the earth and plant shit, you know.
We used to have a saying in the Army saying fast or slow is fast and fast is slow.
Yeah.
You know, you do things methodically. You don't do it like a million miles an hour, but the more you do it, the quicker you can become at doing it.
Yes.
And so instead of doing it all willy-nilly and just going out there, and the more you do it, you can do it quicker, but it's at a methodical pace that it's quicker than maybe somebody else doing it for the first time, right?
Yeah, I think, as a kid, you're playing, and then I was playing as a kid, and then I was lucky I had these mentors, my dad, my uncles, and granddaddies, and other people that taught me how to take my play into training, and that is into disciplined repetition. You take some movement you have in your play, and you work on repetition builds skill. And they taught me training is three things: knowledge, skill, and desire. They feed each other.
Right.
And from the playing to the training, and there's incredible, this YouTube, some of the stuff that trainers are doing and stuff, it's just amazing stuff. And I really like watching them and stuff. But I think the next level or the next transition of training is to start earthing. And how do you take your training disciplines and stuff into earthing, into the earth? And so that's what the research and stuff I'm really focused on here is, how do you plant your feet? How do you plant your stupidity? How do you plant your boredom? Those are the things that I'm working on here in earthing. And one of the key things I find is gratitude. It was interesting to me when I started hearing the term MAGA, Make America Great Again. I thought they were talking about before 1492, about green, make America green again. And that green, to me, if you want to make it green, is how you have to develop gratitude, a great attitude. And that, to me, is a physical thing about growing. You have to learn how to grow things to give them back. Not many other species grow stuff like we do. And you talk about a challenge, that develops the attitude and stuff that in what I call earthing. It's how do I, there's also the whole electrical stuff. Just watching yourself ground barefoot, look up earthing. But I take the earthing concept much, much further. And how do I earth my attention? How do I, it's one thing in the training hall, getting there, how do I take those out and then plant that attention and those skills and that knowledge and desire that I'm developing, and how I get it down into the earth. And basically I'm a shoe thief. I'll try to sell you your feet, a set of bare feet. If I don't do that, I'll steal your fucking shoes, man. I'm just so convinced about it.
I love it. I love it. Well, folks, if you want to check out more what Mick's doing, go to his website, mickdodge.com. You can check him out on Facebook or Twitter. Mick, it's always a pleasure to chat with you and connect to you. I got to ask before we go, because of your iconic greeting or salutation of Yoish, what does it mean?
Well, Yoish I picked up in Okinawa. My sensei over there, Gabu-san, and Yoish was a word that meant, I use it now in training. Say like you're going to do a deadlift.
Yeah.
You just say, you train yourself. So you go, Yoish. And that Yoish is, I'm participating now. I don't care if I get it done or not, but there's no more thinking, no more pausing, no more talking about it. Yoish, get it moving. And so I trained myself to do that. Now, my dad, even though he was a Marine, he hated the F word. And so he said, and all my uncles, they loved the F word. I mean, they were Marines, man. So my dad said, instead of saying fuck, he says, use the word Yoish. And that got me on a journey, as I use it for many things. It means hello. It means goodbye. It means holy shit. It means that was really good. Fuck you. Or, I just use it one word. And when I get in these conversations and stuff, I just Jewish, it means all of them, pick one which fits you, and that's the way I interpret that and use that word. But nice. I picked it up in Okinawa. I had the most awesome opportunity. I'm realizing that now, growing up in Okinawa and over in the Ryukyus, incredible mentors, incredible people. Okinawans are amazing people. I mean, they've had the Japanese jumping on them, the Chinese jumping on them, the Americans jumping on them, and they still hold strong. And their people have been spread out all over the planet and stuff. But Okinawa was a major place of in that as a young kid growing up and being on Marine bases and that, but being in the whole scene of Okinawa was amazing.
Absolutely. Well, Mick, thank you so much for being on the show today. It really does mean a lot, and it's always great. I always learn something when I chat with you, and I hope somebody out there listening gets inspired and steps out of their shoes and into their life, and the soil that's around them and connects to. I can see somebody barefoot right now in their apartment going, Yoish! They'd be out there on their balcony. Maybe we can create a movement.
Yeah, create a movement. I bet you people are about ready to get out. I mean, this confinement and stuff, boy, that's got to be hard on people,
Yeah. So
see, that was the thing about COVID I thought was the death part of it's sad. You have to honor and process the folks that have died, and I've lost some friends from it. But I was born for social distancing. I just love it. You go in the city now and people have to stand further apart. I think that's a good idea. I always found they crowded on top of one another. And then the mask, I love wearing masks, putting the mask on. But I think one of the things, there are probably a lot of people talking about, I just haven't heard of my little looking around on the computer, but immune system. You got to have a strong immune system. You really need to take a look at how do you do that? How do you develop a strong immune system?
Well, and that's why I love, because you talked about, the cold water immersion. You talked about exercise. You talked about, you didn't mention earthing, but you were talking about earthing, connecting back to the earth, flushing your endocrine system, drinking water, feeding your body properly. And that all feeds. And once it's all connected, once all the wires and every switches are on, like it's supposed to be, then the body is a kick-ass machine, right? It's, then there's no sickness. No sickness is going to be messing with people.
Yeah, that's our theory.
Yeah, that's the right.
That's the theory, but we both may be full of shit, man.
Right.
But it makes sense to me, and what I've seen in life is a strong immune system, and what does all that entail? And it requires good food. There's so much to it. It's a lifetime practice. And that's why, I grow here, just tons of food. And Denise McCambridge, she's an awesome gardener. She lives here and she knows how to eat. Me, I'm the kind of guy that, man, I've survived on roadkill. I think that's where jerky comes from, is roadkill. It's like, but I've had to change my ways and really look at nutrition and this computer. There's so much incredible research going on and stuff. I think we live at a time right now that I call it the extreme sport of aging. And there's a guy out there, Barbell Shrug, wrote a book on it, and he's got a really neat website called greysteel.org, GREY steel.org. Ex-Marine doctor, his buddy that wrote the book's a Marine, and the barbell is a prescription. He's got some incredible research going on in there. So, I would have never known about that except for the computer and stuff. So it's like, I'm so thankful for those things,
Absolutely. Well, Mick, once again, thank you so much for being on the show today, and I look forward to keeping tabs on what you're doing. But thank you so much for being on, and
Yours.
Next soon.